Hey there, audiophile and tech enthusiasts. I believe you guys have never heard or seen before this device. This is actually a DAP by this very new company called LR Audio, and this is the L7 DAP. It's relatively very new in the market and it can only be acquired through Chinese e-commerce website. The purpose of this video is actually to feature a little bit about this device. There are some traits and features on this device that is a little bit more interesting than compared to a lot of other portable DAPs out there. And let's talk about it today. Welcome to the channel, folks. This is the Play 32-bit, a channel where we talk about weird content such as games, audio equipments, camera gears, as well as tech gadgets. Fun fact, a lot of portable DAPs out there that comes with a dual DAC chips usually comes with an ESS 9018 chips or the ESS 9219, in which, for example, the Hiby's AP80 Pro Max. So what's so special about this? This thing runs on a dual ESS 9038 chip. Comparing the 9038 to the 9019, this is actually a significant upgrade in terms of chip performance. But that said, for a DAP, a good chip does not determine the player's capability. A lot of factors comes into play, such as the power, the output, of course the OPM, the way how this circuit is being designed, and how well the quality of the internal components are. There is just so many combinations out there. So I went ahead and blind buy this thing, just because I know that this thing has a dual ESS 9038. But how is it compared to for example, the Hiby R3 Mark II, or even the Shanling M1 Plus, or my newest AP80 Pro Max? Let's find out. So a little bit about the company that launches this device. It's called LR Audio, but in Chinese it's called 石英石, which is stone audio, stone, direct translation. I am unable to find a lot of information about this company, and in a lot of Chinese forums and whatnot, they briefly talk about it. Hardly anyone actually do a proper coverage on that. There are one or two videos out there that did mention about this device, but it's mainly in Chinese, and it's not exactly a very full in-depth run-through on how this thing compared to other potential devices. And I'm still in the midst of journey of trying to find out what's my perfect portable DAP out there. So I thought this might fill the gap of the Shanling M1 Plus, in which I really like it, but the battery life sucks. Well, TLDR, no, this thing doesn't. So if you want to cut the video short, well, really, the conclusion is this thing doesn't fill the gap. But it has something that far exceeds any DAPs that I've owned so far, and I think it's worth to be talking about it. Size-wise, it's really a Godzilla compared to the Hiby's AP80 Pro Max. Very, very, very big compared to that. Of course, it's like comparing this to perhaps the Hiby R4 or those Android-based devices. It's still pretty small. Obviously, it's very pocketable. Weight-wise, well, it is a little bit more heavier than the other DAPs. But as you can see here, it's relatively chunky. It's relatively huge. Come on, focus. Yep. Yeah, so why bother spending extra $200 for this thing? It makes no sense. Might as well just go and buy the M1 Plus again, since I miss the M1 Plus so much. It's a blind buy, and I wanted to give it a try. And I thought that this might be something unique, since the M1 Plus runs on an even more higher quality chip, but it runs on a single DAC. Single doesn't mean worse, nor does it actually mean better. But a dual ESS 9038, come on man, you have to give it a try, because the only one that I saw with a dual ESS 9038 is actually a desktop amplifier. It's a desktop deck. A desktop deck that runs the same kind of layout, the same kind of configuration, put into a size of this thing. Wouldn't you be curious about what exactly can this thing do? I'm actually very curious about how it performed though. So that's why I'm actually doing this video right now. Well, if this company is able to churn out this device being the first product of theirs this well, I think it's pretty worth looking at what are the future devices they can actually churn out too. Hopefully, well, they are not a scam company. I'm not sure. I'm really not sure at this point, because hardly any information you can find out about them. And I'm still a little bit sus about this device, but I cannot deny the fact that it does perform pretty well. Okay, first off, let's take a look at the physical features on this device. It's a very typical 4 buttons control. The buttons are pretty tactile. They're very satisfying to click. So the power on and off button, the next track as well as the previous track, and the play pause buttons. Volume knob is especially satisfying. It is very sturdy, unlike a lot of other DAPs out there. It does come with a 4.4mm Pentacon audio output, as well as a single-ended 3.5mm audio output too. And of course it does have an SD card slot as well, but additionally this thing also have an internal memory of 32 gig, which is currently what I'm running on right now. Honestly, I think the device is very well built. The whole thing is almost made out of aluminum. It does feel very hefty to hold. Because of that, it kind of gives a little bit more premium feel. Well, it is a little bit more chunkier than my usual preferred size for a DAP. The L7 weighs 162 grams. When I bought it, it does come with a leather cover as well. It is a pretty decent leather cover, but however it's a little bit loose, so do take note. I don't know if this is real leather or is it like, you know, man-made leather, but it is pretty decent. Alright, up next, let's take a look at the interface. I do have some pros and cons about the interface. To really sum it up, it is a very basic interface. There are very limited things you can customize to it. But rest assured, I mean the basic stuff for music settings like EQ and stuff is still available. And yeah, you get a 10-band EQ here, which is, I think it's fine, it's great. Comes with 9 default preset settings for you if you are lazy to customize your own EQ. But for my testing, I'm not using any EQ at all. Connection wise, it does have Bluetooth as well as wireless. This is running on a Bluetooth 5.2, and the codec wise, it only has an LDAC, AAC as well as SBC. Pretty limited in the codec choices, to be honest. Alright, let's take a look at the playback interface. I really dig this retro look, but unfortunately, you cannot change the color on the volume bars nor the frequency wave below. I think it's a small issue. After all, I'm still very satisfied with the overall look at the playback page. That being said, right, there are some areas in which I think it can be tolerated, and there are some areas which I think is not. It still retains the same issue which I have with the other Hiby devices, which I cannot search for a track whenever I'm in the playlist itself. But at least fortunately, the search function outside the playlist, it gives me a QWERTY keyboard, which I can type in easily. If you have fat fingers, I'm so sorry about it. It might have a little bit of issue trying to type here, as the screen size is pretty small, as you can see from here. However, there is one major issue to the way how this device sort the playlist or sort the song that is unforgivable. The way how it crawls information, like a lot of other devices out there, they will sort your song based on the title, which is within the metadata. Whenever you right click and press property and then you scan through behind those stuff. Not on the front end, where you right click and rename the file, not on those areas. So this device, however, it reads the data, or at least your song title, from the front end part of the file. Which a lot of time, when you rip the song out of CDs, the tracks that you're gonna get, the naming is gonna be really wonky. It's gonna be like 0, 1, 2, 3, 4. Only the metadata stays consistent when it comes to retaining some part of the data from the tracks that you rip. So this will create a whole set of problems in which you need to rename every single file that you have. And you cannot change the way how this device sorts the file either, which is a bit of a deal breaker for me, to be honest. And the thing I don't get about it is that the device obviously is able to extract out data from the metadata, which it did display correctly in the artist as well as the album title in the playback page perfectly. Just the freaking title is not being extracted out. Like, why? Okay, now let's also talk a little bit about the battery life. While the device did claim that it's able to hit a continuous playback on wired devices up to like 9 hours, 9.5 hours or so. Yeah, and so my device did manage to hit about 9 hours. That's a little bit under the mark of what I usually would expect of a DAP. So according to my stress test that I did, I used a Ziggard Estrella wired IEM, playing on a 45% volume on a single-ended 3.5mm output, and that gave me about 9 hours of continuous playback. Okay, up next, let's take a look at how long this device will need from boot up till it search for the connected Bluetooth device. Boot up takes about 11 seconds, and it takes additional 6 more seconds to search for the Bluetooth device. Not too bad. While the menu function on this device is extremely basic, you cannot do a lot of things to it, it still can function as a standalone DAC if you want. There's a setting in the USB section where you can actually turn this into a stationary deck. Let's take a look at the actual specs here. Not that any of these specs actually does impact any part of the real world usage, but there are a couple of details that I actually wanted to highlight here. Thank God this thing isn't running on a Hiby OS. For its CPU, it uses the Rockchip RK3308 processor, which has 4 cores, each at 1.3 GHz. Okay, so as mentioned earlier, this thing does have an internal storage of 32 gig. It can support microSD cards up to 2 TB. It did say here that it's able to support Windows, Mac, iPhone, Android for file transfer. I believe it's quite similar to the Hiby Link where you actually can transfer file through wireless. For components, it comes with a dual ESS 9038Q, as well as a dual OPA 1612. And the M chip they use is the RT6863, 2 as well. And I don't know what the hell is this mute thing. Probably the chip that used to control the noise floor, which is the RT1238. Not that any of this chip actually does matter. The only one that does recognize is the ESS chips. And maybe a bit of the OPM. The internal battery is a 3000 mAh battery, which it claims that for single-ended output it can run up to 9 hours, for balanced output about 7 hours, and for Bluetooth about 20 hours. I can't say it's actually the worst. I think it's pretty mediocre for what it claims to be. A lot of other DAPs out there, even the Android ones, is plus minus about the same battery life. The L7 does not have a fast charge, and according to my tests, some gun chargers will work on it, some gun chargers doesn't work on it. So don't be surprised if actually you buy this device and some charger doesn't work, try swapping to other chargers, it will work. The highest balance output you can pump out is about 1015 at 32 ohm, and the noise wall performance is at 0.0009%. In comparison's sake, the Shanling M1 Plus is actually at 0.0007, which is slightly better than this. But I absolutely could not hear any actual noise from this thing. Local file supports are pretty basic: ISO, MP3, WAV, Flex, MP4, OGG. Language support-wise is pretty limited. English, Chinese, Japanese, Korean, Dutch, French, Spanish, Italian, I don't know what's this, Portuguese. Pretty limited to be honest. And typing language-wise, there's only English and Chinese. For Bluetooth, it is currently running on the Bluetooth 5.2, and it only supports LDAC, AAC as well as SBC. For those of you who are curious about the LED thing, yeah, it can be turned off, it can be customized to whatever color you want as well. Usually you will display the color based on the file types you're playing or during the charging phase of the battery when it's low. As for the size and dimension on this thing, it is 95.9 mm in length, 65.5 mm in width, 16.5 mm in thickness. Device without cover is about 162 gram, and I bought it for about 192 USD, inclusive of shipping. For context, I'm from Southeast Asia, so the price might be different for you, based on different tourists and taxes. Okay, so here's the thing where I find a bit sus when looking at the official information. Especially about this 5.5 volt battery chip looking thing. I don't know what the hell is this thing where on the top it says Recall, on the chip it printed Recon, and on the bottom it says Rechon. What the is this? I have no idea. If someone knows what the is this thing, please do let me know. But knowing that it's a Chinese company, they usually don't give a flying about how the English is being spelled. Well, I really don't know. Unless I really do a teardown on this thing, but it's way out of my expertise to do that. If you're curious about whether or not this thing has enough power to drive headphones that are very demanding, right, it works. It works flawlessly. So here I have the Edition XS with a modded headband. Currently the volume is set to 77% on low gain. Right out of the box, at 77%, it works. Yeah, as you can see, so I switch on the high gain option, immediately the volume went up. It's pretty amazing, to be honest. So high gain at 77%, yeah, it really rocks you quite a bit. So not bad. What about if you look at other headphones? This is a Feel FT1. I don't think you will need that high. Probably can go down. Let's try at 60. Whoa! Shit. Super loud. Yep. So about 57 to 60% volume is perfectly enough to drive majority of the low ohms headphones. For IEM wise, I believe it's around 45 to 50% volume. 55 if you really want to, you know, get that dopamine going. Now let's go into the most important part, the sound quality. How does this sound? And holy shit, it's stupidly good. Oh my goodness, it's so good. Well, that really describes how I felt when I first listened to it. I'm doing an A/B testing between this and the JDS Element 2, which is my desktop DAC. And to my really horror and surprise, right, it's actually quite similar in the level. Well, there are some areas where I think it's definitely not on par with a proper full desktop deck, but it's really very close. It's amazing how this thing sounds. I think the only criticism I can actually give this is that the vocal recreation felt a little bit less emphasized than instruments being played in backgrounds. That's really the only issue. Any other thing else, this thing rocked the hell out of me. My dopamine was pumping really high when I'm listening to tracks I really like. The track that I used to play test this is Q by Rio. This track in particular is a very fast-paced track, and there's a lot of instrument and a lot of noise notes playing around, especially from 032 onwards. So during 032 is basically chaos. If your earphone or headphone is not of good quality, you will hear muffle. And if your player is not of good quality, you also hear muffle. And the way how this the L7 is able to separate each individual instruments and everything else so clearly is pretty amazing. So I really kudos to the way how, I don't know what magic they pump and they cramp into this damn thing, but yeah, it's just freaking good. I mean, obviously it's not a fair comparison. You're comparing an AKM chip to an ESS chip, right? But what I felt there is like they are on the same level. Unlike a lot of other DAPs or other devices that I tried before, when you compare that to a desktop deck, right, you obviously can tell there's a clear differences there. But this is just another different flavor, but it's something of the same grade, if I can call it this way. And comparing this to the similar ESS chip, which is the Hiby's AP80 Pro Max, running on a dual ESS 9219, the Hiby sounded a lot more boomier. So the bass and the vocals sounded a little bit more emphasized, but the rest of the instruments were completely mudded off. When you're listening it to the Hiby's alone, it is a very enjoyable device. But now you're putting it side by side with this L7, it's completely a different league. Especially when you do a A/B test with the Hiby's and the desktop deck, right? It's a clear difference. It's a very clear difference. So in terms of sound quality alone, the magic of having a dual 9038 chips, it's cracking crazy. I don't know how the f they plant this thing in. What the f is this thing? It just sounds so good. So out of all the sound frequencies that I enjoy the most, probably the bass is best replicated here. If you pair this with any of the IEMs or headphone that has very good performance in bass, oh my goodness, it's gonna blow your mind off. I cannot wait to try this out with the X2HR. So what's good? For a DAP of this size, it creates the illusion of having a subwoofer in your ear canal. That's really how good it is. And I don't have any other thing else to describe how well the bass is being created on this device. You have to try it out before, you know, making your own judgment about it. I have never tried other DAPs of this size or smaller size that is able to do this on this level. The Esther and Kern SR35, which I have, it has a hell lot of clarity, is really clear, but the bass replication is nowhere near this level. This thing is probably the most balanced when it comes to like my favorite kind of highs, wells, and also the best performance kind of bass. So for audio replication, for all the DAPs that I tried out so far, I think this thing easily deserves a 9. I can't give it a 10 because I think the vocal is still a little bit more suppressed. If the vocal somehow can be bumped up, I mean probably in EQ you can do so, but let's talk about neutrality. No setting, no additional, weird tweaks to it. So yeah, that's where the deduction of -1 score. Otherwise, this thing is a perfect 10 when it comes to sound quality. So overall, what's my verdict of the device? Sound quality, easily a 9. UI-wise, a 7. Functionality, 6. Build quality, 9. Oh yeah, and battery life, a 6. Overall, about 8 actually. So it wasn't a bad device. However, there are some lacking features that I think perhaps with future updates or with the new iteration version, it probably can get better. But is this device gonna be my top recommendation over the Shanling M1 Plus? No, unfortunately, I still think that Shanling M1 Plus is a more stable device and a safer choice if you want to prioritize audio over battery life. But I couldn't deny the fact that this is a very interesting device to have. And if you really want to consider audio quality over every other aspect wise, or if you really want to use this as a micro-sized desktop deck, I think this fits the bill very, very nicely. It's something worth considering. So with that, I conclude my video for the L7. If you manage to find it somewhere either local or through online, it's a pretty decent recommendation, but not something over the M1 Plus. Cheers!